so fancy. And I'm just sitting there just
Get your little dance going.
yeah, man.
We got a
Catchy.
lot to unpack from this week.
Hey, was there any weather this week?
Just a little bit, not much. Nothing crazy. Nothing
I
crazy.
don't know. I don't really think we have anything to unpack. I don't think I think we're good, man. All right. So, hey,
Um,
thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. See you next week.
that's the end of the episode. Um,
Just want you to hear our catchy tune.
yeah, just jam out to the tune, and we'll see you later. Um, so where do we start? We had Tropical Storm Arthur kicks off hurricane
Yeah.
season. Wasn't that
Yeah.
impressive, but in a sense of tropical standards, but it did some pretty serious flooding in Louisiana and Mississippi. That was
Yeah. So I was watching this thing. You and I had this discussion months ago about the super El Nino setting up, or what will probably be a super El Nino, and what it's going to do to hurricane season this year. Now that we both agreed that the Atlantic was going to be pretty, uneventful, as most likely the Caribbean, but the Pacific will liven up. And I said, well, I think the only thing that could be a threat to us in the Gulf is if something came through Mexico and got into the Gulf. And lo and behold, that's literally what happened. So, it was getting on and staying up to date with the National Hurricane Center and seeing what percentage. It's funny that they went from like 10% to 15% to 40% to 60% to, oh, there it is. So, and see where they thought it was going to go. And they had it hitting the coast, which I guess technically it did, sort of. Texas, once again, first to do something, but it really didn't do much. But going through watching the HRRR models and watching the 3-kilometer NAM and the RFS and just seeing what the Euro and all that, and seeing what they were predicting, and everything had that storm staying out into the Gulf and going through Louisiana, except for the 3-kilometer NAM. And even when you go through like an ensemble, everything was pointing towards staying there in the Gulf and strengthening to a tropical storm, and then it would come through and hit Louisiana, which, as we know, is exactly what it did. The 3-kilometer NAM actually had it coming up and making a little more significant landfall for the Texas Gulf Coast. It had it making it a little more interesting for the greater Houston area, Galveston, that whole Port Arthur, Beaumont, not Beaumont, the whole region, Katy and all that. And it's not really, we got a pretty significant amount of convection that day and the evening prior, but whether or not, I know that storm played a part in it, it wasn't directly related to it because we did have a low as well, but we did get a decent amount of rainfall those 2 days prior, and especially the day of, but nothing like Louisiana got.
Yeah, so the issue this storm had was the frontal boundary that was laying stretched across from Houston all the way to the southeast. And we knew it wasn't going to be able to make it far inland going into this anyway, because that front was sitting there. That front's going to stop it.
Yeah.
But that front's what caused us issues, because it basically just wrung out every bit of moisture that storm had in a very small area. I know I can't remember the exact town on the top of my head. I should have wrote it down in my notes. But there was one of them that seen right at 30 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. And there isn't a flood management system in existence that can prevent anything bad from coming from that.
Especially in New Orleans.
That's a lot of rain coming down in a very short period of time. And it was unreal to watch unfold. The dam that they thought failed, it didn't fail, which is a blessing.
Thankfully. Yeah, thank goodness.
It did as it was designed during hot water situations. It was designed to funnel the water around the dam. And it did just that. And it dropped the water levels pretty quickly and ended a lot of the flooding along the coastal region there and along the coastal housing around the lake there. And So that spared probably 60 to 70 homes on the downstream side of that dam.
Oh, if not more.
Yeah, they as a precaution, they did what they were supposed to. They evacuated everybody in the vicinity, just as a precaution. But they still maintained their faith that their dam was going to do what it was designed to do, and it did that. So that's an engineering win, in my opinion.
Yeah, we had a similar situation last year. Not far from me, probably an hour ish northeast of me. We had a dam that was going to fail, and sort of did. Thankfully, it wasn't to the point where it released, a large amount of water, but it had cracked, and I don't think it was anything weather related. I think it was just structural, but it had cracked, and it was cracked large enough that they had to evacuate entire communities, obviously below it. I mean, that would have been a Harvey level event if that had gone. And for a few days, we thought it was going to. It was a scary moment. So I can only imagine how they were feeling out there. And anytime you hear a dam's going to go, I mean, that's worst case scenario, man. I mean, you think back to 2017 and you think of Harvey and what happened and all those people that got flooded because we just released water. And it wasn't because anything failed. It's to keep it from failing. And, when unfortunately a few had to be, I guess, lack of better term, sacrifice. I hate really using that term. It sounds horrible. And we obviously, felt terrible for them. But, you had to give up the few to save the many kind of deal, even though it doesn't help the people that had to lose their homes. That was a horrible event. So if it was that big of a scale, just by releasing water, imagine what it would have been if the entire dam went. I mean, it would have flooded all of that. It would have just been certain areas that would have been completely flooded. It would have been everything, I mean, all the way down to, good gosh, I mean, all of Conroe, I probably would have gone. Who knows how far it would have been, but glad it didn't. Glad it didn't for Louisiana. Thankfully, they were able to, it did its job. They were able to construct it in a way that it can hold, and it did. So it's awesome.
That is awesome. Before we dig any deeper into Arthur, I think we need to pivot our focus onto the severe weather event that was basically a precursor to what Arthur did across the Southeast.
Yeah.
Arthur in this severe weather event kind of started about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I know there were some lingering questions whether Arthur was going to hinder the environment up there just based off of how tropical systems work. Lo and behold, as we know now, it didn't. But I want to give props to the SBC. A week before this event kicked off, they already had it identified. They had an area nailed down, and it didn't shift much at all. They absolutely knocked this one out the park. All the way up till day one of the event, the only thing that shifted was when they issued the moderate. And as we all know, that area is going to shift each forecast update whenever they issue a moderate risk. Anything over a moderate is going to shift. And enhanced.
Oh, day one's so volatile anyway, so
yeah,
it's almost expected.
Yeah, I think they shifted it twice on day one before the event actually got going. But that event kicked off in kind of a weird fashion. That MCS that started out in Iowa, it actually produced a tri-state tornado. Did you know that?
I did not. No, I did not. I knew it was a tornado producer. I didn't know it hit all 3 states, though. Interesting.
It did in 1.3 miles.
Interesting.
It was a very weird geographic setup where the tornado touched down at to where it lifted, and it went through 3 states in a matter of about 5 minutes. So I found that very interesting. I've seen that on my feed on Facebook earlier, and thought that was
kind of like a Arclatech situation. You get a tornado touchdown in Texas, and it's through Louisiana and in Arkansas in a matter of just minutes.
Yes, exactly. I think it was Iowa,
which has
Missouri.
Happened.
I think it was Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois.
Yeah,
that was the 3 states. Was Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. That MCS. It went up scale quick, and it started out as a couple isolated cells that produced it. I think it produced 1 or 2 tornadoes, nothing crazy. But then when it went up scale, it instantly was producing 90 to 100 mile an hour wind gust. And And that strength continued all the way down through Illinois. It did tick down just a little bit, down to about 60, 70 mile an hour winds as it tracked across Illinois. But there was a lot of concern surrounding that MCS and what it was going to do to the overall environment for the afternoon. And the environment, as forecasted, the last event did, there was a really quick rebound on the backside of the environment, backside of the system. And before you knew it, we had supercells breaking out all across the area. And it produced some pretty prolific tornadoes. There was multiple PDSs, tornado emergencies. It was pretty quick. It went upscale pretty quick, and it started doing damage very fast.
And one of our guy right there in the middle of it.
I try to get him on here.
Yeah, he has some stories. Hopefully, maybe we can, soon get him to talk about it. I think he said one of them came down right on top of him or something. Yeah, he
inadvertently drove into it.
Yeah, well, and he's very fortunate because somebody else did the same thing and it tossed their vehicle 150 feet. And that vehicle looked like a mangled mess. Look, man, without getting, too religious, I get this is a weather podcast, but that was God 100% on that because that vehicle, the damage on that vehicle did not look like something you'd walk away from. And he just had a couple scratches and I think he said possibly a broken bone and that was it. And wow, because I've seen vehicles that look just like that where we can all think of at least one. And then there was one a couple months ago as well that killed that mother and daughter. And that car looked just like it. It looked like Tim Samaris's. It looked like that mother and daughter's vehicle, and he walked away. Shocking. So, thankfully,
a lot of blessings around this event.
Oh yeah, significantly, and thankfully, our guy was able to get there and chase and come back safely. I was actually on Zello with him, as well as one of our radar people and another one of our chasers in Canada. And yeah, he I don't know how many times that man, I can't see anything. It's too heavy. He's trying to punch these cords to get through it to get on the southern side of these storms because he was coming in from the north. And that tornado to hit Effingham, he was on the north side of it. And that thankfully it stayed pretty stout because anytime you start looking at the tail end of that life cycle, as you well know, it can detach, it can shift north, it can do a lot of things. We've had storm chasers lose their life because of it. So we're thankful and we're able to keep him out of that. We're thankful that he stayed safe, but there was a lot of people who didn't.
The occlusion process is
a
storm chaser's worst nightmare.
It's terrifying.
We've seen.
Why don't you explain to them what that is? Actually, anybody watching this doesn't know what occlusion is.
Well, it's pretty much when the life cycle of the tornado is ending. So the mesocyclone is trying to fold in on itself, and it will physically almost detach from the main part of the storm, and the storm is basically pulling it back in. So sometimes it'll just during the inclusion process they'll come loose and they'll reattach and loop back on its path and continue where it was going. We've seen that several times this year. There's several documented cases of tornadoes making loops, and Freddie McKinney documented probably one of the best looping tracks I've ever seen during the inclusion process. But it's a silent killer in aspects of it can cause a tornado to sit over a neighborhood for a very extended period of time because it
doesn't have anything pushing it anywhere.
Yeah, it just sits there and it's basically its own world unless the storm grabs it and pulls it back in. And thankfully, we didn't see much of that with this past event. The tornadoes were there, and then they were not as long track. There were several long track, but they wasn't as long track as I think they were initially forecasted. I know they had some of them. They were potentially going to traverse the entire state of Illinois in the initial forecasting. That's just based purely off updraft velocity tracks on models. Now that's not always going to be a continuous cycle of a tornado process all the way across. But it's a very good indicator of when this updraft is at its strongest. And generally when it's at its strongest, it's producing a tornado. So That's when the storm was operating at peak efficiency. So,
did you see that video from Brandon Coppock, the Fox weather chaser, stopping his chase and running into that house? Good for him. Look, and it doesn't matter the fact that there was nobody in the house. Good for him, and I want to give a shout out to him. Any chaser that stops their chase to go check on people, good for you, and you deserve to be shot out. So, Brandon, good job, man. That's awesome. We've Freddie and some of the other chasers that we see and watch videos of and know that do stuff like that, man. That's good for you. You deserve all the flowers and credit you can get, because not everybody does that, unfortunately. And that house was pretty wrecked. Thankfully, nobody was in it, so that's a good thing. So before we move on to another topic, there was a video that you had me watch right before we started this thing, and it just goes to show you. We're not going to go into too much detail about it, but it just goes to show how quickly your life can change. And it's just like that, right? This guy is filming a tornado coming to his house. He thankfully at the last minute finds a way to get to shelter. The tornado completely destroys his house. He steps out, and it's nothing but sunlight where there used to be his home. And all he had were a couple scratches on his hand. This house showed EF4 damage. Whether it is or not, we kind of wait to see. But the damage shown signified strong high-end EF3, possibly EF4, just from the damage of it. And and we're talking, minutes or less, sometimes seconds. That's how long it takes. And so, if you have a tornado coming your way, and we're just going to just say this, and we'll move on. Get to shelter. If you hear a tornado warning be issued, take it seriously. If you are lucky enough to hear a tornado siren outside, get to shelter. You just don't know. You just don't know. And we see videos every single time there's tornadoes, that happen, of these people that, man, I'm so glad I took shelter. I'm so glad I did this. And they're still alive because of their quick action. And unfortunately, we hear of stories of people who didn't, that are no longer with us. So just take it seriously. That's all we're saying. So anyway, moving on. Moving on.
Now that you're done with your TED Talk.
Yep, I'm off my soapbox. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk and all that.
Yeah, so the main event, I think it narrowed down to 26 storm reports. I've got them pulled up here. I don't have it pulled up on the feed here, but we're looking at a total of 426 total reports from the event. 26 tornado reports. We had 362 wind reports. Wow. And only 38 hail reports. Now the wind was forecasted as well. I don't know exactly what they had the wind at. I think they had it at 45%. So, okay. When you look at the overall spread of the track, they nailed it. When you look at the spread of each report, they nailed that.
Yeah. They really did. It was impressive how accurate that was that day. And thankfully so. The right people were told and warned at the right time.
Yeah. And another applause for their warning system.
Yeah, absolutely.
They killed it again. Warnings were being issued very quickly. There was a couple of them that when I seen the warning get issued, I was kind of skeptical on the initial scan that come across when it was issued. And the very next scan, it made sense. So they were
like they know what they're doing.
They were predicting what that storm was going to do before it did it, and that's their job at the end of the day.
Right? Yeah, it's literally the point.
That takes nowcasting to a completely different level, and they knocked it out the park. 110%. I want to give all the props in the world to them. I don't think they get enough credit. What's more amazing to me is they nailed this forecast so well with zero morning of atmospheric data. And that's a whole nother talk for another day. But they had zero
when you have
environmental data. Now, granted,
and that's what we rely on. So those of us who do this, the chasers, the nowcasters, the guys that are relying on, storm data that day, either to keep ourselves safe, keep somebody else safe. We need that. All right. And so the fact that there wasn't any is crazy, especially
Well,
with it being as high a risk as it was.
well, the thing that blew my mind is when I got on for the meso analysis that morning. Um, there was observed soundings out for everywhere but the risk area, and that really does us no good when it comes
None.
to forecasting these events because you know, like our chaser Dakota,
Mhm.
going into this, that's how he picks his target area is based off what the morning environment looks like.
Yeah.
And granted, the morning environment wouldn't have done you as much good with this event in particular because of that morning MCS that come through. The environment's going to be completely different in the wake of that. So what you see that morning is not a good indicator of what it's going to be later on that evening.
Yeah, that MCS kind of came in and ate it all up.
Well, it ate it all up, but I mean
But like I said, it rebounded
So what,
quickly.
meteorology wise behind this event, we knew there was going to be 2 rounds of convection.
Mm-hmm.
There, in that trough that swung in, there was 2 shortwave impulses on the trough. There was the initial one that was a little more subtle on the leading edge of the trough. That's what initiated that morning round.
Yeah.
The issue was timing of that secondary trough. When was it going to move in? Was it going to move in too soon? That there was a lot of question marks, and I think that was another one of the things that kept them from pulling the trigger on a high risk event just based off the parameter space because they didn't know exactly when initiation was going to happen for the next round. So if you don't know when, if it would have started 3 hours later, the environment may not have been right. If it had started an hour earlier, the environment wouldn't have been right. So, a moderate was about the best they could do with that situation. And, a moderate's nothing to be taken lightly as well.
No,
when you
definitely
think
not.
when you think about the scale, that's a 4 out of 5. That's as close as you can get to being a high risk without being one. And, I've seen high risk down play a little lower than what a round of the similar setup with a moderate gets played. But there's just so many factors that go into how they issue those risks that unless you really understand them, you'll never really understand it.
So for those who don't, just a real quick Cliff Notes synopsis of what we're talking about. So the SPC looks at what they think the environment's going to be day 3, day 2, day 1, and they issue these outlooks, determined by whatever they find. So if they feel like it's going to be a heavy wind event, there's going to be a lot of straight line wind, but there's not going to be a whole lot of rotation in that. There's not going to be a whole lot of directional shear to cause that rotation to happen. Then they're not. Then they may put a 20% risk of wind, but a 2% for tornadic activity, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. This environment is exactly what fuels these storms. So, how much cape or energy is the storm going to have? What does the shear look like? If it's just going to be nothing but speed shear, then it's probably going to be a wind event. If there's a lot of directional shear, it could be a tornadic event. If there's both, it could be just a really bad day. What is the lift look like? What do dew points look like? And they go through and they see all this, they put it all together, and that's how they come up with their outlook. Typically, it's as day 1 gets closer, which day 1 is the day of. It does typically change. It could improve. It could lessen. It just kind of depends on what happens. More often than not, the outlook improves, and by improves, I mean increases. But I have seen it where there was a moderate risk all the way to day 1, and then they dropped it to slight because the environment changed. Imagine what it would have looked like if the MCS had not rolled through that morning. It would have been a high risk, and it probably, and as bad as those tornadoes were that day, it could have been a lot worse because they would have had all that environment, all that energy, all that shear to itself. It wouldn't have had to have rebuilt. It wouldn't have had to have recreated itself, so to speak, in layman's terms, and it would have been a much more severe event.
Absolutely. And Overall, I think the event, there's people that are still kind of call this event a bust. And, that's what we run into every time they issue a moderate, and it doesn't verify the way the weather enthusiast want it to verify.
Yeah.
If this event would have truly verified as a moderate, we could be having a completely different conversation when it comes to loss of life.
Oh, sure. 100%.
Because the environment that was in place was just absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best sweeping photographs that I have seen in quite some time. Overall, probably some of the best ones we've seen this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that event, it was a very beautiful setup. Our chaser Dakota had it marked down the day before the SPC released their initial outlook on it. So he already said that's where he was going a week before, and he nailed it. And it's a testament to studying, taking your time, actually going through these. There's a couple cheats when it comes to forecasting a tornado setup that I've learned, and I've learned from Dakota in general.
Yeah, he's pretty good
when it comes to forecasting these tornado setups. And one of the biggest things that we've noticed time and time again that's proven itself is 3 Cape. And 3 Cape, something you can find on a forecast sounding, or the 3 kilometer Cape on some weather models actually output that, not all of them. But you kind of want to, if you're chasing and you're looking for an area to target, you want to find a very good wind profile with an environment of 3 Cape of around 120 plus. That's just the amount of lift that's in the upper 3 kilometers, lower 3 kilometers of the atmosphere. That's where tornado genesis happens. So you want a good environment for the tornado. You want something that's supportive for the tornado. And,
right.
Convective Chronicles, the guy's a genius. He's got a whole video on that as well. In part of his Storm Chaser coaching series. Guy's a genius. And I rely on him a lot. I watch a lot of his convective breakdowns, and that's where I've gained a lot of my knowledge and forecasting for these events. Overall is from him. So
his academy is incredible.
Yes, it is.
Which I hope that maybe you don't. Never mind. I'm not going to call them out.
Yeah, we don't do call outs. We don't do call outs. We established that last week.
No, we're not going to do that. So I would, if I knew I had an event coming up and I'm going to chase it, I would about 3 to 4 days out, typically about 4 days out, I start looking for what I think could potentially be my target. And then I start pulling data from it. And I have a notepad and I'm literally writing it down every single day. And I have like 2 or 3 spots that I check, and I look at where I think it's going to start, when I think it's going to end, and every other model run in between. Sometimes I have a lot of calm, sometimes I don't. And then I go through and I write down everything that I know, to check for those days. And then as the days get closer, I narrow it down. And then of course, day one, I have a very good idea of where I'm going. And I've been pretty spot on. Now the storms don't always develop that day. I can't control that. No chaser can. But I had the tornadoes down in Houston. I had severe weather the next day, also down in Houston. The very next day, I was on the only severe warn storm in the entire southeast region. I had the only severe warn storm several weeks ago in the central region of Texas. And so, but that one didn't really materialize, but can't do anything about that. But yeah, I mean, you want to chase, just know that there's a whole lot of homework that is involved in that. You don't just wake up that day, oh my goodness, there's a storm out there. Let's go chase it. Let's go drive thousands of miles and see absolutely nothing because I did do a homework. So you'll get that even when you do your homework.
For the most part, anybody who wants to call themselves a chaser in the state of Illinois, I think this year they've been blessed with nothing but everything can be happening this year in their backyard.
Gosh. Yeah.
I seen a crazy statistic today. There was a map that I seen that It plotted the top 10 states this year for confirmed tornadoes. And Mississippi was at number 2 with 83.
Whew.
You have to double that to get to the amount that Illinois has seen. They've had 164 confirmed tornadoes this year so far. And
Dude,
it's not over.
Texas this year.
It's not over. You know, the thing that sucks for the state of Illinois this year is El Nino. El Nino kind of tilts the subtropical jet, and when it does, it tends to favor more northern severe weather outbreaks this time of year. Now that activity is going to shift to the southeast as the year progresses. That's what we think is going to happen. That's not a confirmed thing, but that's what we think is going to happen. But that's just, they've been in an unfortunate pattern this year overall. And miraculously, I don't know if we've had a fatality in Illinois this year.
Not that I know of, no.
I'd have to do a little
digging. About them.
I'll have to do a little digging. I could be wrong, but for an area of the country that typically doesn't see this kind of weather all the time, they're killing it. You know, I think their average is like 56 to 64 per year, and they're well above that now. You know, they're 100 plus over their average, and the year's not even over. We're at the halfway point.
Oh, he said they're on track to beat Texas, and we're the undisputed kings of tornadoes.
Well, you know, there just hasn't been any favorable setups for Texas this year. I do think that's going to change. Mark my words. I do think that's going to change.
Well, it's going to change when fall gets here. When we start getting a little cooler weather, there starts, you know, interacting with the extreme. That's when we get a lot of our. So I was telling you earlier off camera, you know, we had those that little mini tornado outbreak in Houston in December a couple of years ago because we had that cooler air coming in. It was a cool front. Everybody here thinks it's cold, but it ain't. Whatever. But it came through and interacted with all of the heat and humidity that we've had, that we always have. The fall for us is typically, yeah, we'll get some in the spring too, but typically more along the lines of, you know, like the Panhandle, North Texas, stuff like that. But down here where I'm at, that's typically a fall, early winter deal because we have that cooler air coming down and it's mixing with what is still a very moist, rich environment from the Gulf Coast. And yeah, we see a lot of them around that time.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to pull up some statistics from this previous event of confirmed tornadoes just to kind of see where we were at on it. I think there was the Effingham tornado did get upgraded today to the F3.
Okay. Well, that would explain, like I said, that's the damage that I saw.
Yes, that tornado did get an upgrade to an EF3. It was initially in an EF2, but they were not done surveying damage, as we know that, and they're probably still not done. Yeah. That's a multi-day process, but right now all they've identified is EF3 damage. But it's been a busy, you know, couple weeks up there. You know, you know, the event almost a week to the day prior, another moderate risk day, multiple tornadoes touched down across the area. And then the very next week, it happened again. Almost the exact same areas got hammered once again. And I'm hoping they're going to get a break here with this pattern shift that's about to happen. But I don't think they are. I think they're under the gun Sunday again. Just based off what I was looking at on models today, I think they're under the gun again Sunday. This initial event's going to kick off tomorrow with this enhanced risk in the Central Plains. And as we know, it's going to shift east, and they're right under the gun again. And just based off the setup of the warm front and everything, it's just almost a replica of what just happened. It's showing a favorable supercell environment across central Illinois, and it's just that's how it looks right now. It could shift come tomorrow. It could shift come tonight. But overall, the Storm Prediction Center already does have an outlook issued for that. It's our current day 3. So let me pull it up real quick and see what some of their verbiage is in that.
All right. So while you're doing that one, let's talk about the Effingham tornado real quick. So one of the key characteristics to that tornado was how incredibly translucent it was. And if you didn't if you weren't in an area where you saw the debris cloud of, picking up, whatever, you may not even know it was on the ground. Not every tornado is going to have a condensation cloud going all the way up the shaft of the tornado. Okay, it's just not. Some tornadoes are extremely translucent, and anybody that know translucent, it means clear, or see through, or whatever, how you want to say it. Some more than others. We typically will see those in tropical systems. The hurricanes and strong tropical storms that come through and put down tornadoes are usually a lot more translucent, due to several factors. But one of the main ones being they just don't stay on the ground long enough to condense. So that's just condensate. That's just how it is. And so that color, that brown or black or whatever gray color that you see is just dirt, debris, sand, whatever is sucking up into that funnel. That's what's giving it that color. The tornado does not always come down with color. It could be all it is a rotating column of wind. As you know, you can't see wind unless it's interacting with something else, right? So another reason to just be mindful of these things and know when is the time to seek shelter, because you might not see nocturnal tornadoes, rain wrapped tornadoes, translucent tornadoes. You may not see them, and they become incredibly dangerous because it could be on top of you before you even realize it. So that was really interesting. If you go back and watch some of these videos of that tornado that hit Effingham, it was extremely, not totally clear. You can see it. It had a lot of debris, especially near the base of it, but or not the base, near the ground. But it did not look like a typical tornado at all.
So, looking at the SPC outlook for day 3 currently, it looks like it has shifted a little further south. But probabilistic wise, they've only got hatching on the far western portion of the risk area, but the risk area extends from Colorado all the way over to Illinois. It's a pretty big risk area overall. But the southern portion of Illinois and extreme southwestern Indiana are encompassed in it as well.
Okay.
But that's just some of the same areas that have just been pounded over and over again this year. And tomorrow looks to be a decent day. They've got a 5% SIG level 1 for tornadoes tomorrow across
that's noteworthy.
Kansas and Nebraska. So tomorrow looks like it could be a pretty decent day. We do have an enhanced risk issued, and I'm sure they're going to nail this one just as they did in the past.
Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. All right. So make sure I'm on the right. Yeah. So you got your enhanced risk over a lot of Kansas, Nebraska. You got a hatched. Yeah, you got your hatched tornado risk right in the same area, more Nebraska on that one. Interesting. 5% with a intensity of 1.
Yeah, SIG level 1.
Yeah, your wind. So they seem to think it's going to be more of a wind event. 30% in central to northern Kansas, all the way to the southernmost portion of Nebraska. Again with the SIG 1, and then hail, the smallest risk, more westernized Kansas, southwestern Nebraska into the furthest most eastern side of Colorado. So
yeah, so reading the verbiage of the overall synopsis for the event, they're saying that it's initially going to be supercells are going to merge into multiple QLCS circulations, which that'll transition it to the wind mode. But initially, it does favor the chance for some strong tornadoes. You got 40 to 50 knots of effective shear.
That'll do it.
It's got enough spin to do something.
Yeah.
So that'll be something interesting to watch. Eventually
Very large hail.
Yes. We'll eventually be going live when these events kick off. That is something I want to do in the future. I don't know about you, but I don't know if my camera cut off a minute ago.
Mm-mm.
Okay. I had a mini panic attack because my browser crashed.
But
The thing is, it was weird because I could still hear you, but my browser was gone. So I had to open up a new browser and log back in. And you were just still going. So I was like, okay. I had a mini panic attack because, I mean, we're 41 minutes into this thing. And thankfully, this does cloud recording. So it's not recording locally on my machine. Because that would have been very bad.
I've got you.
So
I was just running my mouth about outlooks, but I mean, this could be bad. I mean, you could be seeing 2 to 3 inch hail, which, you know, those are windshield busters. Don't take that lightly. But you know, early afternoon tornadoes and then late evening wind threat possibly.
Yeah, the hail looks to be initial. If you look at how they've got the graphics set up, the main hail risk seems to be further west, and then as it moves east, it transitions to a tornado threat, and then wind threat as you get further east. That's just overall storm evolution. That's how it's going to happen, especially if it's going to transition to a QLC.
You could follow that whole trough just by looking at their outlooks.
Yes.
And I bet you if we pulled soundings in that entire area for that life cycle, you'd probably see the exact same thing. Well, maybe if they get weather balloons up there.
There's a reason. There's a reason why forecasts look the way they do. Our forecasts tend to look a little different. But there's reasons behind that.
Well, yeah. So eventually we will unveil some cool stuff that we've been working on, that LJ's been working on, when the time is right. But really, really cool stuff coming down the pipe. So
coming soon to a browser near you.
Yes.
Hopefully soon we'll be coming to these devices too, but you know, that's coming.
Yeah, given that most of those cost more than our computers.
Yes. Well, you know, the thing is you know, there's a lot of people that they run their entire life off of this, and you know, their entire life, their businesses can be ran off your phone now.
God, it's crazy. This phone right here, there we go, costs double what my laptop costs, and it's a lot stronger, a lot faster, a lot more powerful, probably a lot more resilient. So, yeah,
I'm finally upgrading to a new phone here in the coming days. I'm waiting on it to come in. So
Android all the way, baby, all the way.
iPhone 17 Pro Max is coming.
Android. Yeah, whatever. You're sitting on a bench with me now. Oklahoma kicked your butt. Whatever.
I probably just ticked off some Texas fans, but it's okay. It's okay. Go Dogs. Yeah. But I think this will be a good stopping point here. We're pushing 45 minutes now, so
yeah.
We're
talking college football now. We've totally gone off the rails.
Yeah, so we're gonna call it here, and I hope to see you all next time.
Later.